welcome. My name is Kelsey and I'm an educator here at the High Desert Museum. Today I'm going to be talking to you about fire ecology and how the forests around us here in Central Oregon are adapted for forest fires. So what I want to start with is asking you, when you hear the term forest fire, are you thinking negative things or positive things? What's coming to your mind? I bet a lot of people are thinking negative things, right? And what I want to talk to you about today is how some forest fires can be positive for the forest, while others definitely can still be negative. So it all kind of depends upon the intensity of the forest fire. So some forests around us, they need fire to survive. It helps them clean themselves out because sometimes they can become overgrown and crowded. So they need that fire to help clean them out. So a low intensity forest fire, like in this picture right here, happening every 3 to 20 years or so, is positive for a forest. If you can see, the fire is burning low to the ground, and when it's doing that, it will be burning at a lower temperature too. So it's going to kind of clear out whatever's on the ground. The trees in this forest are adapted to survive these kinds of forest fires. They have really thick bark and some high up branches too, and that's going to help them survive and just clear out all of the extra stuff in the forest so that they can continue to grow strong and they're not competing for nutrients like sunlight and water with other things growing in the forest. Now, a high intensity forest fire, this is when things can be negative for the forest. This definitely looks like a negative, and this might be what you were thinking if you were thinking negative at the start when I asked. So this is really bad. It's burning high up into the tops of the trees and the crowns of the trees, and these trees are not going to survive this forest fire. So this is a negative forest fire. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is how those positive, low intensity forest fires help keep a forest healthy. But before we go more into that, I just want to talk to you about fire in general, and I want to point your attention over here to this fire triangle. The fire triangle are the 3 ingredients a fire absolutely needs to be a fire, right? You need oxygen, heat, and fuel, otherwise you're not going to get a fire. And I'm going to explain to you and show you how that works, and what we're going to do while I'm showing you how a fire needs all 3 of these things is we're going to play with taking away one of the sides of these triangles, and we're going to see what happens. So when we're talking about oxygen and a fire, let's pretend you're lighting a campfire, you're going to go camping. Where is the oxygen? Don't overthink it, right? It's all around you. It's in this room right now. I can breathe it. It's in the forest if you're outside camping. Oxygen is all around us, and there's no on or off switch. It's just there for us. So fuel, if you are lighting a campfire, you're going to roast some s'mores. What is the fuel? Fuel is what's burning. Yeah, logs, kindling, sticks. In a forest fire, it can be, trees, branches, grasses, shrubs and bushes, down trees and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of fuels in a forest fire. So that's why it's important that we as people, anytime we're in or near a forest, we're really responsible if we're using fire, like when we're camping, to really make sure that we put our fire out, because there are a lot of fuels that can burn in a forest fire. You don't want to accidentally start a high intensity forest fire or any forest fire. Forest fire, like the positive ones I talked about, happen naturally, and those ones are good. We don't want any human-caused forest fires. So heat. When you're starting a fire, what could be a heat source? Yeah, matches and lighters and things like that. When one of those naturally occurring forest fires happen, what do you think might be a naturally occurring heat source that would start a forest fire? Yeah, if you said lightning, you're absolutely right. Lightning can strike multiple times a day, even if it's not raining. And when lightning strikes, it strikes at the surface, the temperature of the surface of the sun, which is 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty hot, right? That's definitely going to start a forest fire. And like I said, if that lightning is striking in a forest, there's lots of fuels in a forest. So that's why it's good if these naturally occurring forest fires happen every 3 to 20 years, because they'll clean out all those extra fuels. Because if you're camping and you are starting a fire so you can roast s'mores, how many logs do you put on the fire? 3, 5 maybe, and that'll give you a nice sized fire where you can stand close enough to roast your s'mores. Would you put 50 logs on your campfire? No, it would be so hot you wouldn't be able to stand close enough to roast your marshmallows, right? So that's why we want our forests to have these low intensity forest fires, to clear out all those extra fuels so you don't get that really big high intensity forest fire. Alright, so I said we're going to going to play with taking away one side of the fire triangle. So this is an experiment you can do at home if you have these items or similar items. A small cup, a little tea light candle, matches or a lighter, and these wood blocks. And one other thing you definitely will need is adult supervision. So if you're watching this video without an adult, go grab an adult and then come back to us and we can do this experiment together. So what in these items is the heat source? What do you think? What is going to start the fire? The candle, the blocks, the cup, the candle, the blocks, or the match? What do you think is going to start the fire? Yeah, the matches are going to start the fire. What is the fuel? What is burning? Yes, we will be lighting the candle. And then where's the oxygen again? Is it one of these items or is it just in the room? Yep, it's just in the room. Oxygen is free. Everyone has that oxygen for them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to play with taking away the oxygen. We are going to light the candle and then put the cup over it and time how long it takes for the candle to go out. So make sure that you have an adult with you. If you are lighting the candle, you have to have an adult with you, or the adult can be lighting the candle too. And make sure that you are using safety precautions, striking the match away from yourself because you don't want to come up too close to your face. So what we're going to do is I'm going to light this, and then we're going to place the cup, keep getting mixed up, the cup right on top, and then we're going to time how long it takes for the candle to go out. You got to watch pretty closely on your candle if you're trying this at home, because it can get low and it looks like the candle is pretty much out, but you want to wait until you see a little plume of smoke, because sometimes it looks like it's almost out, and then if you lift the cup, it's getting all that oxygen that it needs again, and then the flame will go right back up and you haven't really completed the experiment. So make sure that you watch for that plume of smoke. All right, so I have a timer here. So we are gonna get started on this, and we're gonna do 2 different trials. So we'll get to the blocks on the next one, right? So, ready, make sure, away from yourself. Get your candle lit, and then make sure you have that candle out all the way. All right, are we ready? So we have our timer, ready, set, go. All right. How long do we think it's gonna take? What are we at right now? We're at 8 seconds. How long? It's getting a little foggy in there. And smoke. All right, so that took about 15 seconds for the candle to go out. And why did the candle go out? Right, because we took that oxygen away, and it took 15 seconds because there's a little bit of oxygen in the cup, but the fire essentially ate up that oxygen, and when it ran out, no more fire, right? That's because we took away the oxygen. So without all 3 parts of this triangle, no fire. So what we're gonna do next is with these blocks, maybe if you have Jenga blocks at home or something similar, we are gonna prop the cup up next to the wood block. So there's a little bit of oxygen getting in. But do you think it's gonna be enough oxygen to keep the flame going? Maybe. What about how long? How long do you think the flame can go when it's just getting a little bit of oxygen? Let's test that and see. Again, remember your match safety, striking away from yourself, holding at the bottom of the match. Make sure you always hold the match like upright. You don't want to come down and light it because then the flame is going to go up and it's going to get your fingers. So make sure you're being very careful that way. All right. You can even kind of tilt your candle if you want to make it a little easier. But you want to make sure you turn away too when you're blowing out the match, otherwise you'll blow out your candle. All right, are we ready? All right, here we go. So with this one, you want to make sure, since it's propped a little bit, that you're not getting too close to it, because you can accidentally breathe the candle out if you're too close and you breathe, or you can be putting oxygen in it just enough to keep the candle going. So we want to not interfere with our experiment. So how long do you think it's going to take for this one to go out? It's getting low. Almost. All right, and stop. All right, so that was almost 40 seconds. So the first one was about 15, and this one was 40. So it was longer, right? Definitely longer, but it still ran out of oxygen. So it definitely, even with a little bit, it needs a nice, full, big supply of oxygen to keep going and keep that fire healthy and being able to survive. So again, all three of those sides are needed. And we talked about how in a forest, there's definitely oxygen, it's all around us. There's definitely fuel, trees, branches, logs, pine cones, grasses, bushes, things like that. And there's definitely heat sources. So we as humans can be really responsible and make sure we're not adding any heat sources around our fires, right? Being responsible with our campfires, being responsible with fireworks and all sorts of things like that. But like I said, there's still lightning. We can't turn off lightning. And that's good though, because these forests, like I said, they need a low intensity forest fire every 3 to 20 years as part of their survival. So I'm going to show you a healthy forest versus an unhealthy forest, one that has that regular fire happening and one that hasn't had fire in a really long time. So this is an example of what a healthy forest looks like. So big, tall trees, they're pretty big around. If I were to walk up to this tree, look, there's a gentleman right here. He's, it's about, that tree is bigger around than he is. So if I were to go and give that tree a big hug, I might not get my hands all the way around. And they're pretty spread out, right? Everyone likes their own personal space. So these trees in this forest, they have personal space. And they're not fighting or competing for nutrients, that sunlight and water. Everyone is able to get sunlight and water. And there's grass growing on the ground. Even the ground is getting sunlight and water, so grass can grow on the ground. So this is what a healthy forest looks like. This is probably having those low intensity forest fires happening pretty regularly to keep everything cleaned up and healthy. And another thing about those forest fires going through is after they go through and they burn, there's ash left over in the soil, and that's really good nutrients for the soil, for plants, grasses, shrubs, things like bunchgrass and bitterroot to grow back, or bitterbrush to grow back. All right, so the next picture, this one right here, this is taken in the same exact spot as that healthy forest just 80 years later. It looks pretty different, doesn't it, right? So in that first picture, there's a gentleman standing in the foreground and people on horses in the background. Are you gonna ride your horse through this forest? Probably not. Not very easily. If you try it, right, you and your horse are probably gonna get scraped up by all these branches, right? So it's pretty crowded. Everything's touching each other. They're definitely competing for sunlight and nutrients and water. And if we look at some of these trees, some of their trunks, they're pretty skinny, and look at this one right here. It's pretty skinny and it's bending and twisting. Trees want to grow up nice and tall and straight and go right for the sunlight, right? This one is kind of bending around and trying to get sunlight where it can. So it's very unhealthy forest, right? Everything's too close together and we're competing for nutrients. So what we're going to do next is we are going to go out into a trail here at the High Desert Museum that you can go to next time you're visiting. And I'm going to show you the differences between a healthy forest and an unhealthy forest. So let's go. All right, so here we are on the fire trail out at the High Desert Museum, and this is something you can visit the next time you're here. So there's 2 forests on either side of this trail, and you're going to help me, and I'm going to show you how you can do this when next time you're out in a forest, determine which side is healthy and which side isn't healthy. So to do this, you're going to need a tape measure like this one right here. If you don't have one of these bendy tape measures, you can make one if you have a ruler, a string, and a marker. Just cut a long piece of string, line it up next to a ruler, and then make a mark every time there's an inch on the ruler, and then it'll work the same way if you don't have one of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on one side of the trail, look, see, observe, what do we notice? Go on the other side of the trail, do the same things, and then decide which side we think is healthy. So let's go over here first. So we have this area roped off because we do field trips here where you're doing the same things. You're doing a forest survey. So on this side of the trail, what do we notice? How many trees are inside this roped area? It might be kind of hard to tell through video, but there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 8 trees in this area. How spread out are they? Are they pretty spread out? Are they pretty close together? What do you think? Also, let's look at the ground. Do you notice anything on the ground? Do you see some bushes and stuff? Yeah, over here we have bitterbrush, and you can see some grass and some other green things starting to sprout up and grow. And any sunlight, it's a little bit overcast today, but we can kind of see that there's some sunlight hitting the ground. So remember back to all those things that I pointed out in those 2 pictures inside the classroom. What makes a healthy forest and what makes an unhealthy forest, and what are you thinking so far? But next what we're going to do, where the tape measure comes in handy, is we're going to measure a tree and see how big around it is. So what you'll do is, starting on the side with the number 1, you'll take it about at your shoulder height is good. You don't have to go, too low or too high. You want to make sure it's not twisted or bent, nice and straight. Pull it nice and tight, and then see about how big the tree is around. So we're about 38 inches around is where the two ends met back up. So 38 inches, that's a good sized tree. So now we'll go over to the other side of the trail. We have string around this side too. What do you notice over here in kind of this roped off area again too? How many trees? A lot more trees. What about the ground? Do we see any bitter brush like we saw on the other side? Any plant life at all growing on the ground? Any grasses, anything green? Not so much, right? What are we seeing on the ground is we're seeing a lot of downed trees, a lot of sticks, branches, and things like that. Not a lot of living stuff on the ground. And then we will measure a tree. Go to this one right here. And again, starting at the side that has the number 1. Now, do we think the first tree was 38 inches? Do we think this tree is going to be bigger or smaller? If you're guessing smaller, I think you might be right. Let's see. Where does it meet up? At about 13 inches. So that's a lot smaller, right? So based on the observations we made on both sides of the trail, do we think this side is healthy, or did we think that first side was healthier? What do you think? If you're saying this side over here is healthier, you're absolutely right. The trees are bigger around, they're more spread out, there's more sunlight hitting the ground, there's growth growing on the ground, right? Bitter brush and grasses and things like that. This side over here, it's not healthy. Everything's close together. The trees are pretty small and scrawny. A lot of them have fallen over. It's a pretty unhealthy forest on this side. So you're probably wondering why we have this unhealthy forest here on our grounds at the museum. And we do that on purpose to educate visitors on what a healthy forest and an unhealthy forest looks like, and the benefits of thinning a forest and doing prescribed burns and things like that. So this side of the trail over here has had a prescribed burn, and that's where humans come in and say there hasn't been a natural fire in a long time, we should probably help this forest along. You can kind of see there's some stumps where things have been cut down because some trees are growing too close to each other. So we help this forest not get too overcrowded. So this is what a healthy forest looks like. And this side hasn't been touched by fire in a really long time. So visitors and viewers can see what an unhealthy forest looks like. So I wanted to thank you for joining me and let you know that next time you're out in a forest, if you have a tape measure or you made a string one, you can do this same experiment and kind of decide if the forest around you is healthy or not. Thanks for joining. Bye.